Okay, hello and welcome to the Saratoga Power Lunch. My name is Yan Zhao. I'm the mayor of Saratoga. Saratoga Power Lunch is a monthly webinar series on the second Tuesday of the month from 12 p.m. to 12:30 p.m. that gives residents a chance to learn about Saratoga in bite-sized pieces. Today's webinar will feature State Senator David Cortese, who will be sharing updates from the state. State Senator David Cortese was elected in November 2020 to represent Senate District 15, which encompasses much of Santa Clara County, including Saratoga. Before his service in the state Senate, he served on the Santa Clara County Board of Supervisors, San Jose State Council, and Eastside Union High School District Board of Trustees. Senator Cortese grew up in San Jose and was part of a family that has been actively involved in civic, cultural, and business activities for generations. He graduated from Bellarmine, earned a Bachelor of Science degree in political science from UC Davis, and earned his JD at Lincoln University Law School in San Jose. Most of us are familiar with the services and functions of local governments like cities because they touch our lives on a day-to-day basis through services like garbage collection or traffic enforcement. However, our partners at the state play a key role in our ability to provide these services. Our elected representatives at the state level, like Senator Cortese, are a driving force for establishing the funding and policies that enable cities to serve their community by doing things like providing funding to pave local roads and adopting a uniform building code that ensure new structures are safe. Senator Cortese is joining us as he's about to finish his first year of service on the state Senate. I cannot wait to hear about his experience and to get an update about everything that is happening on the state level. Senator Cortese, thank you so much for joining us today. The floor is yours if you would like to begin.
Well, thank you, Mayor. I appreciate very, very much the opportunity, and I also appreciate the great work that you're doing in the city of Saratoga. I was at the State of the City address just a few days ago, and it was very impressive and very inspiring. And of course, I've visited Saratoga several times recently, including a visit to many of the businesses in the city of Saratoga. So we'll talk about that a little bit more and how we do outreach in the office, but I'm just very, very happy to be here. And I'm very much open to answering any questions that you have today.
Thank you, Senator Cortese. Before this seminar, we did ask our attendees to submit questions. We do have quite a few. So would you like me to just start getting into the QA right away?
Yes, that would be fine. Thank you.
Okay. All right. The first question is, how has your service as a state senator compared to your other elected positions?
Well, that's a great question. Thank you very much for the wonderful introduction. And you mentioned, I've been on the Eastside High School Board for 8 years, many years ago, a very large district. And I served on the city council in San Jose for 8 years, and then the Board of Supervisors for 12 years. All of those governing boards were relatively small, of course, compared to the number of people in the legislature, but each one of those experiences helped me a great deal. And I realize that now that I'm here because of that education background, the municipal background, just like you're doing right now, except in my case at the city of San Jose, and of course, the county, which is a huge level of government with a multi-billion-dollar budget and all of the safety net services and all of the things that go on there. So the issues I learned about helped me a lot. I don't think anything could have helped me enough for the many, many processes and procedures and challenges here. But we still had a great year last year, getting 6 bills signed by the governor, and most of those will help Santa Clara County and the city of Saratoga very directly. And we also had a great amount of success getting budget earmarks for our own county, and we can talk about that some more later.
Thank you. You represent a very large and diverse, Senate district. How have you tried to connect and learn about that so many different communities with your district?
Well, as I mentioned in my opening remarks very briefly, I love all the cities, including what we often refer to as the West Valley cities in this district. This district runs from the Stanislaus County line, basically. It runs from the other side of Mount Hamilton to the east, all the way to the county border, Redwood Estates, in the hills above Saratoga to the west. Almost 1 million people, so it's huge. And the city of San Jose is mostly in the district, so that's huge. And then Montecito, Los Gatos, Saratoga, Cupertino, and Campbell. Our district office is purposefully located in the middle of the district on Bascom Avenue in Campbell to be close enough for everyone to come by and visit, especially as we're opening up from the pandemic now. But I love Saratoga. Saratoga is an easy place to do outreach. Our staff in the district office is focused on community outreach most of the time, almost 100% of the time, and I'm right there with them, especially this time of the year when we're not in our voting session. Today I'm in Sacramento for a special hearing, but many days during this time of the year, during the fall, I'm able to be in the district, and Saratoga is one of my favorite places to visit because of the feel of the city, the people in the city, the businesses in the city, and the valuable feedback I get every time I talk to people in the city of Saratoga. It makes such a difference in terms of doing my job.
Yeah, thank you, Senator Cortese. Just a couple of weeks ago, you visited us and visit our downtown and talked to all the business owners. Thank you so much. I know you brought your district office and Susan to offer what help your office can do for our business owners. So really appreciate that. Thank you. Okay, the next question is in recent years, the state has adopted a slate of laws that seeks to address the affordable housing crisis by reducing local control over land use and development. How can we strike a balance between local control and affordable housing so that local jurisdictions and the state can work collaboratively to address the affordable housing crisis?
That's a great question. I know it's a question near and dear to all of the mayors and city council members in the district, and in fact in the entire Silicon Valley, because traditionally zoning, local control over how things look, the character of neighborhoods, the population density in our neighborhoods, the parking ratios in our neighborhoods, these are all things that local government has managed and controlled and done a good job of it in our area. We have a good quality of life. And as I just said a few moments ago, Saratoga is very special in that regard. The state legislature has been, even before I joined last year, has been trying to streamline the process for housing production because there's such a housing shortage up and down the state, including in the Bay Area. And I won't get into those exact numbers because of the time constraints, but it's a pretty huge problem involving hundreds of thousands of units of housing that needs to be built to keep up with job growth, especially in the Bay Area as a whole. Much of that will fall in the big cities, San Jose, Oakland, San Francisco, and so forth. But in the process of trying to streamline the process and speed it up a little bit, the legislature has to be careful not to take away local zoning controls and those regulatory processes cities like Saratoga have to make sure that neighborhood character is preserved, while at the same time, figuring out where housing can go. That said, I know there's a lot of concern about SB 9, and I'm sure we'll talk about that some more. But I assure you, having served the local government, as we discussed in my introduction, I'm very sensitive to and I will oppose anything, that comes in and takes away the zoning responsibilities of local governments, because that's important in your neighborhood, in my neighborhood. It's important for all of us.
Right. You just touched upon, Senator Bill Nye. I think you're aware that the Saratoga City Council opposed Senator Bill Nye, and which will require cities to ministerially consider proposed housing developments containing 2 residential units in zones where allowable use are limited to single-family residential development. As a supporter and a co-author of this bill, what do you expect the outcomes of this new law to be? And how did you weigh opposition expressed by the city of Saratoga and our community members?
Yes, and thank you very much. In addressing, the opposition comments and concerns, and in my own meeting with mayors, especially from the West Valley area, including Saratoga, over the time the bill was being considered, it was really my concern in those discussions to both explain, but also to listen and understand where the concerns and the sensitivity are. And the way I dealt with that is to take those concerns back to Senate Pro Tem Toni Atkins, who's the leader of our 40-person Senate, and she was the primary author of that bill, and to repeatedly let her know that local control is a big issue. I think everyone who spoke to her from the legislature told her they were hearing from local mayors, especially in the medium to smaller cities, where they don't feel like they have a lot of opportunity to do what SB 9 says, which is to allow a lot split, in an area that would typically be a current single-family area, and to allow for on each of those lots, the 2 lots instead of 1, for up to 2 units to be built. So in theory, you could have 4 units or four families. You could have someone in a granny unit and someone in a primary unit now side by side with somebody else in a primary unit in a granny unit. Or you could have perhaps 1 building on each of those properties that has 2 entrances, like a classic, not a classic duplex, but some kind of a duplex that fits into the local zoning standards. What I've encouraged Saratoga and the other cities to do, and I think the county should do this as well, because it still does land use in the unincorporated areas, is to hurry up and make sure and create zoning standards around those single family neighborhoods that are consistent with protecting the character of your neighborhoods. And what's left for you to decide still, even after SB 9 was signed by the governor, are things like the height of the building. That's still in the hands of the city. The width and depth of the building on these lots is still in the hands of the city, meaning you're allowed to have setback requirements between lots and between the street and where the buildings go. And the amount of square footage that's allowed to cover up that lot, that's called a floor area ratio, meaning in simple terms, can you put 1,000 square feet on that split lot, or can you only put 800 or 500 or 2,000? Those are all still local zoning decisions that can be overlaid on any neighborhood to try to protect what goes there. And I think probably in a city like Saratoga, which is different than a Milpitas or a Santa Clara, for example, traditional old-fashioned 50 or 60 style duplexes are probably not something that is going to fit in most of those current single-family neighborhoods. So it's going to be important for the city, the planning department, and the council to come in and say, if you're going to follow SB 9, applicants, builders, homeowners, if you're going to try to do something under SB 9, it still has to fit all of these requirements that we're establishing for this neighborhood about how the building fits and how it looks, and even how much parking it has. Somebody recently, one of the mayors from another city nearby, asked if the parking was still under the control of the city, because there's some legislation that was passed where there's 3 to 10 units, which says that parking restrictions will be relaxed as a matter of state law, but that would not apply to these SB9 lots because the maximum they could have is the 2 units per lot. So you asked me, how do I think it's going to play out, or what the result's going to be? I think it's very important for us to monitor that closely. I think if it starts to begin what some people fear as some sort of a money grab, where people come in and try to convert lots, just to make money, regardless of the character of the neighborhood, that the legislature will have to come in, and adjust that law or tweak that law, regulate some more, and return more of that local control, if you will, to the cities, or make it clear that cities can slow down that process and stop it from happening. Saratoga has a particular problem, which I do want to address this year, which is fire safety, around any further development. I visited Saratoga enough to know that, we have single family lots right now, which don't have enough defensible space around them. And the fires that we had not so long ago on both sides of the valley really were a great threat to communities like the one I live in the East Foothills, near the San Jose Country Club, and communities like Saratoga, which are right up into the foothills, in high fire hazard areas.
Well, thank you. Speaking of the, the fire, I guess, in 2020, Senate District 15 was hit pretty hard. You mentioned, by both ICU complex fire along the east side of the district and the CZU fire on the western boundary of the district. What are you working to help mitigate risk, the fire risk in Saratoga and other communities of your district that are at risk for wildfire?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you for that follow-up question. It's great. A couple things came to awareness, if you will, when both those fires hit. And those fires hit at a time when there was actually 600 individual fires going on up and down the state. There weren't enough resources. A lot of resources at times were pulled out of the SCU fire over to CZU side, to the Saratoga side and the Santa Cruz side, because there weren't enough resources, there weren't enough tankers, there weren't enough firefighters to fight both those fires at the same time. There was more dense population, cities and towns like Los Gatos and Saratoga, or in the Santa Cruz Mountains, Scotts Valley, and places like that, that were probably a lot more threatened than some people even realize. I was told by the chief, the Santa Clara County chief at that time, Chief Bowden, that one overnight shift in wind during the CZU fire would have caused that fire to start to engulf Los Gatos and Saratoga. So it's a big issue. It's not a make-believe issue. It's a life safety issue and a life and death issue for people who live in foothill. I call them foothill communities, but in communities like Saratoga, Los Gatos, or even areas of the East Foothills. My own home was in an evacuation area, which was relaxed to an evacuation warning area, but my family had several hundred acres burned of ranch land just east of my home. So I'm very aware of the consequences of this. We've fought for huge investments, $1 billion in wildlife prevention and resilience money, in the state budget right now this year, to start increasing those resources, to hire more firefighters and to do more maintenance and fire suppression activities like creating defensible space. So you will see the results of that over the course of this year. It's a race against time because we know there's going to be more fires. And then I personally was able to get one more Moses unit for the county. I think Saratoga is familiar with those. A couple of years ago, we held a press conference in Saratoga with Evan Lowe announcing the first Moses unit right in front of the fire station in Saratoga, which is a $2 million piece of equipment that instantly creates cell phone or wireless connectivity for everyone when the fire is going on, because the fires typically take out cell phone towers and cell phone service. So these are mobile units that can be moved around. So not only can the firefighters talk to each other or police, but also residents can have temporary access, especially those who are in more secluded areas, say in the western part of your city. So these are important investments. You will see more. We expect there to be a good budget surplus again this year. And I can assure you a lot of that will go to further augment fire and wildfire protections.
Well, thank you, Senator. Half of us Saratoga is in hillside, at a risk for wildfire. So what you do, for helping us mitigate the fire risk, it's very important. This is one of the biggest concerns we have, for the city council. We often talk about, because our location, it's half of our land, it's in the hillside. So thank you so much for what you do. Okay, next question. I know you have led efforts to promote gender and ethnic pay equity where you were a Santa Clara County Board of Supervisor. What goals do you have to continue your work to encourage equity at the state level?
I'm working on it all the time, and you find it in all different sectors. It's still a big problem. Gender equity, particularly. I think we have equity issues, of course, around race and ethnicity, and especially when you look at actual data in terms of who's hired and how much people are paid. Some of those issues are more evolved and more entrenched than others. I mean, we even see some of those issues in our education system. So all of our systems need to be corrected, but gender has been already an issue that's challenged me, and I've challenged others during my first year in the Senate. And it's not as, sometimes it's more subtle. It's not as obvious as one would think. I'll give you a very simple example. We have a bill that will come back again in January that we worked very, very hard last year to try to give nurses, hospital nurses, the same workers' comp coverages as other healthcare workers. They don't have that currently. It's an odd thing to me. But when I look at the history of the nursing profession, for whatever reason, it has historically, especially going back a few years, been very much a female-dominated category of work, classification of work. That's changing over time. It's becoming more gender diversified now, but it's still about 90% women. And if you look at EMTs, the people who bring, the ambulance drivers who bring someone on a gurney to the hospital, they have significantly better protections under workers' comp insurance in case they hurt their back or get other kinds of injuries than nurses do. It makes no sense. And guess what? EMTs historically have been about 90% men. So men are getting compensated and protected better in the workplace. If you think about this in a very simple way, when a person is handed off on a gurney at the emergency room from an EMT, they literally roll that person over and nurses take over. The nurses grab the gurney and bring the person into the emergency room. Why is it that in that magical little moment there, that all of a sudden the workers' comp protections cease to exist for those women who are taking over, that situation? So you see how insidious and subtle and systemic some of these issues can be that are really holding women down. And I think during the pandemic, we've seen it even more because some of our frontline workers, like nurses, have been hit so hard that I think it's created greater awareness about the protections they need in the workplace. So we're working hard at it. That's just one example, but I kind of wanted to use that example to explain sometimes how subtle these things really are, but how important they are.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your effort and for your great work. Next question. Forecasters are predicting that we will see another La Nina weather pattern this winter, resulting in another dry year. How are you working at the state level to prepare and help our community through worsening drought conditions?
Well, first of all, the drought itself is has been declared an emergency in the state. It's the worst drought now on record since the late 1800s. It's very serious, despite the fact that we're getting a little bit of rain currently. It's minimal relative to the overall need. Reservoirs need to be filled up. We're at risk if that doesn't happen. Again, not to alarm people too much, but we have only 3 sources of water in Santa Clara County. Some communities only have 1 source, but we have groundwater. We get some water from Hetch Hetchy out of San Francisco system, and we get some water out of the aqueduct, the state aqueduct. But all of those are being more and more limited now. So it's a big issue. I think though we are working on it. We'll continue to work on it. We'll continue to be on top of the situation to make sure that, you know, people always have the water they need in their homes. The fastest thing that people can do to address the problem and help their own state and their own city, like Saratoga, is to conserve, because overnight you can start saving water in a way that nobody can force you to do just by conservation measures in your own home. So I don't think, because of a lot of reasons, a lot of distractions lately, including the pandemic, I don't think we've emphasized conservation as much this time as we have in previous drought cycles, and we need to do that. And we have a great voluntary community. People step up, they recycle, they conserve, they do the things they're supposed to do when they're asked to do them. And we just need to keep asking our residents to try to do a little bit more in that regard. Lastly, the legislature needs, and the governor needs, to keep moving aggressively on climate legislation. Everyone in the world is watching what California is doing. Not only are we the 5th largest economy in the world, but when we slip behind some other place that's moving towards electric vehicles or limiting fossil fuels, some of our Asian countries, for example, you know, have moved ahead of us because they're investing national dollars in retrofitting their country to try to deal with the needed reduction in greenhouse gases. Kudos to them, congratulations, but we need to be leading here in California. I introduced a package of bills last year, and we'll do the same thing this year to try to make sure that we're reducing building emissions. That is, as cities like Saratoga and San Jose and others do plan additional housing, that new housing doesn't make the mistakes of the past and be so dependent on fossil fuels. Once we put a house there, it's there for 60, 70, or 100 years or more. And how we build that house is so important in terms of what we're doing to the quality, you know, of the air that we breathe and in this climate problem. So that's some of what we're doing in a nutshell.
Oh, thank you, Senator. One last question. What is the best way for a resident of your district to share their thoughts and ideas with you?
Well, thank you for asking that. I want to make sure everyone has my email address. And anything in this, you know, in this production, in this webinar today, created a question in your mind, or even a comment, or if you think I'm veering off course and I should focus on something else, that's fine. You can email me at senator.cortese, Cortese, just like on the screen, at sen.ca.gov. Senator.cortese at sen.ca.gov. And the phone number at our district office in Campbell is 408-558-1295. And we'd love to hear from you. We have a full staff there. They're oriented to constituent service. I tell them just treat it like customer service. When you call with a question or a concern, our staff will drop what they're doing and they will help you, whether or not it's a state issue or just something you need us to pass along to the mayor. We're going to take care of you. So please call whenever we can do that. Thank you.
Senator Cortese, thank you so much for joining us today. And I really appreciate the update, the great work you do at the state. And also I'm grateful for your service to the Saratoga community. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. And thank you for your patience with the state of California. I have to have a lot of patience too up here. with so many things going on, and not all of them are exactly right. But you just continue to let us know any corrections that we need to make in any legislation that's impacting the city of Saratoga. And of course, I'm going to take that very seriously. Thank you so much, and keep up the great work. Thank you.
Thank you. A recording of this webinar will be posted on the city website. This is our last Saratoga Power Lunch of the 2021. I hope you'll find this webinar series beneficial and informative. Thank you all for watching. Thank you.